For you listeners out there, all one of you, maybe two of you, the arena segment we have is from a quote, I believe it was Teddy Roosevelt, has a man in the arena quote that we love. And that's basically somebody's out there, getting their hands dirty. The guy who's actually, the guy or girl actually performing in the middle of the arena. So when our arena is the marketing world, we have businesses and we have different things that we deal with as a result. And Dimitri, I would like to get your feedback here. I had a situation happen this week that's happened historically where you have a client, and despite your best warnings and your best advice, they just refuse to not listen or take it. They're just adamantly against it. In my situation, we have one of the clients we work for, and again, this has happened several times where we'll say, "Hey, we are my agency is responsible for helping people's phones ring." Okay, and so in order to make sure that we're doing the best job we can, we usually put a tracking number there that forwards to one of their numbers, right? That then so that now we can track the calls and listen to them, and then the client can see what calls are coming from which sources. And we really recommend that because one day the phone's not going to be ringing. There's going to be an issue. They're going to say, "Hey, how come I'm not getting phone calls?" Or, "Hey, how come I'm getting shitty phone calls?" Well, then I can go back and listen to the phone calls and see what's happening via the tracking. Well, every now and then you'll have a client who just doesn't want the tracking. They want their number they're showing. And I'm like, look, your number, it's going to ring to your number. And nobody memorizes numbers anymore. We go to our cell phone and we click it. You memorize the numbers of people really close to you. You don't memorize the number of a business. If you do, that must be a really personal, like there must be something very personal about that business. We advertise for people in the home services. Nobody's going to memorize a plumbing, HVAC, electrician number. They don't give a shit. They probably haven't called you for 3 or 4 years if they ever called you at all. So the number doesn't matter. But people really get hung up on this. They want their phone number to show. So what happens is I say, okay, fine. Here's my warning. Have it your way. Put the phone number in. I guarantee you 6 months from now, a year from now, they're going to hit me up and be like, we're not getting phone calls or we're getting shitty phone calls from this number. What's going on? And then I'm going to say, hey, I asked you if we could put a tracking number in place. You were against it. I have no answer for you. Then they get mad at us. And now we're the bad guy and they want to fire us. And it's like, how do you win, Dimitri, in situations like that where you just have a client who's just against your advice and then gets mad at you when they didn't take it?
Let me ask you about this client. What is the client's demographic? The client himself, not the customers of the client.
The client themselves, what is their demographic?
Meaning, is it somebody a little bit older in their 60s and 70s who's used to traditional phone numbers, is maybe grew up where zip codes matter? That means you're a local business or something like that.
That there's truth to what you're hinting at right now. Yes, that happens with the older clients, but in this case, it happens to be somebody probably close to our age. Now, granted, he or she is probably getting direction from the owners who are a little older, but not by much. But to your point, yes, that has happened with an older client who's used to zip codes and all that mattering. But at the same time, or not zip codes, but area codes. At
Area
the same
codes, right?
time, yeah, at the same time, Dimitri, my phone number is going to mimic the area code of your local place. So it doesn't really. So yeah, but that's a really good question.
No, of course, and with modern call tracking software, you can pick your area code. You can pick the exact number that customers will see. We know that, but it's maybe the clients that just can't wrap their minds around it. I know older people who are very different from me and from younger people than me. And I used to consider myself young when I was younger. I suppose I'm getting older now, and there's people in their 20s and teens who are actually the young people of today. And I know for a fact that if you call them on the phone, they're gonna freak out. I think a lot of comedians do some bits about that. It's like you call someone, it's almost like an assault. Like, excuse me, you cannot just call me. You have to text me before you call
Yeah,
me. And so
yeah.
there's a huge difference between the young and the old, where an older person, you text them, you're never going to get a hold of them. You want them on the phone. And we talked about last week is form of communication, method of communication. People who are used to the phone, they could be in the most important conversation of their lives in person. They hear the phone ring. It's cut that conversation. I'm going to go see who's on the phone because they're used to it where if they miss that call, they might miss an opportunity, or it might a long lost family member is calling, whatever it may be. It's already subconsciously programmed into them. So I'm wondering, for this client, what is their subconscious fear or belief that is making them resistant to an obviously good idea?
That is an excellent question that I do not have the answer to. And not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I got to bring this up because I find this interesting. You are right. There's something about the older demographic that will be stuck in their ways. And as you and I get older and we become salty old men, we're going to be stuck in our ways as well. So I get it. But it's also weird to see that change. And this is what I mean. So what you're saying is true. And then what the opposite end is true. Here's an example: voting. Back in the day, when I remember when I was younger, elementary, middle school, even high school, you didn't talk about who you voted for. It was very hush hush private. And you're talking about comedians making jokes about it. I think Dave Chappelle made a very good stand-up joke about it, and about somebody like asked him who he voted for, and he was super offended. But then he proceeds to tell them about having some vulgar sex with his wife. Like he was, like he'd talk about that before he would talk about the
Oh
voting. And that's
yeah,
how it used to be. And
right.
then nowadays, it is not. I mean, and this is with the older demographic that used to be very hush hush. Now something has changed to where they are very vocal about who they're voting for. And in some cases, if you're not on that same page, you're the enemy. So it's weird to see that old thing switch. I'm going further down the rabbit hole of this topic, but it
Yeah,
came to
that is
mind.
an interesting topic, and I think we should write it down for possibly a future episode, because there's a lot to unpack there. But just to from my perspective is, well, thinking about why is that happening, and when did it start happening? Maybe we can start piecing together, from a maybe even from an evolutionary perspective, why it might be happening. Why are people doing it? To protect themselves, to protect the culture that they like? What is exactly the reason that it is happening? But I completely agree with you, man. Like back in school, although I will say, especially in where I grew up, the area I grew up, which is suburban Washington, D.C., it was kind of just accepted that you were voting Democrat. That's kind of like
Right.
there wasn't even an argument. So it really depends on where you grow up, I think, um, as well. But I wanted to get back to the agency issue, and because I run an agency too, one thing that we've tried to implement with some success, I would say, is that if the client is not willing to do an obviously proper or correct strategy, then you kind of give them well, then maybe we're not the best fit to work together. And honestly, that's a risky move, especially if you like the revenue that you're getting from that client. So it's only really something you can pull out when you have extra more you have extra, like, you could give up that client, but more often than not, and I would say, 85-90% of the time, they're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's just something that we do. It's not really so. To summarize it a little better, it's the conversation isn't it, oh, we need to do this. It's just, this is what we are doing
Right.
since we're working with you. It's like, and if you don't want to do it, then internet marketing is not for you.
I like that play, and we're in a fortunate position where we could do that type of move. And I like that move in several different situations. The whole walk away or step away thing is a power play. Um, and it's a power play in different situations, which I will not name every single one because we don't have time for that. But what I like about that, and you've helped me think of something, Dimitri. And again, I keep going down the rabbit hole, but I have to. We
I like
acquired.
every single rabbit hole we go down, because I'm just taking notes for all the episodes we're gonna have.
We had this is something that may have happened to you before. We acquired a client not too long ago. Talking to the client, and usually we get clients because their previous marketing agency sucks. This wasn't the case with this client. Everything is going well. They just heard about us through somebody else at a conference, and they're deciding to switch. And that was a big yellow flag to me, because it's like if you were like, that's like somebody cheating on their spouse with somebody. They get in a relationship with that person that they were doing the cheating with, and that the person they're doing the cheating with cheats on them. Well, are you surprised? Your whole foundation was built on sand. And I kind of feel like this, where I could crush it for you, and you could just up and just leave because you heard somebody say something. And I think in that situation, when I heard that, I probably should have told my business partner, hey, maybe we should advise this guy differently. He should just stay where he's at. Why rock the boat? Just the whole, maybe we're not a good fit. And I think in that situation, we just accepted the client. I don't want to do that again. Anyways, you got me thinking. That's something that came to mind.
It's always easier when you have options. When you have clients coming in and you can take your pick, it's a lot easier than when you're just starting off, or maybe you're having trouble paying the bills of the business. Then you need every client that comes in the door. It's just different. Now, in that case, I really agree with you. In fact, I had a conversation similar to that at a conference where somebody's saying they're doing well, the agency's doing well, the numbers are performing, but they think they can do even better. And it's like, okay, when does that end?
Yeah.
Are you ever going to be satisfied? And as agencies, we're interested in the long-term relationships. If somebody comes in and works with us for 3 months, that's actually a loss to our business. We don't want that. We want the ones that stay for years, indefinitely. And that's a win-win on both cases, that we can learn those accounts better and do better than any other agency can. I truly believe that clients that we've had for years, 5 years in some cases, nobody could do a better job because we just know that those accounts inside and out better than anybody in the world. Um, yeah, so I mean, options, it just depends. And then with that one other client, chances are they'll just let you do it. Like, hey, we just need the access. Here's what it's going to be. Nothing's going to change on your end. This is just what we're doing. This is just what we're doing.
Yeah. Just assume the sell. Like, this is not a question. This is just
It's
how
not
it
a
works.
question. It's not, can we do this? We're doing this
Yeah.
because and if you don't want to, you got to fire us or we quit or whatever. Because we're just doing it. We're just doing it. And they're like, Okay. I bet you they say, okay, I want you to come back on the show one day. And hopefully they didn't say you're fired, of course. But um, yeah, I'm curious what'll happen if you do that. But it is
I think
frustrating sometimes.
I'm going to take that approach with the next one, assume the sell and be like, hey, this is just how it is. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Anytime. Yeah, and I think it's great. And one of the reasons we love getting together, both on this podcast and in general, and with our fellow co-agency owners and different masterminds and so on, is we get to share the from the arena stories. So we've all got similar stories. Everyone has a unique client or a weird client or somebody that's just off their rocker that is kind of fun to talk about. And then, of course, the wins as well.
Well, speaking of wins and some losses, we're going to the Super Bowl commercials, right? Had some people who crushed it
Yes.
with them and some companies who didn't. So I'll let you take the reins here, bro.